You know what's ruining America? It's the Koch brothers with their anti-government, pro-business stance. How dare they? How dare they support businesses and stand against the all-powerful, wonderful, all-knowing government that looks out for us and protects us from those businesses? Well, that's what the LA Times might have you screaming if you believe they're absolutely divorced from reality rhetoric about their latest meddling with the market. Now, it's just incredible that people actually believe this kind of propaganda. It is insane. This is from the LA Times. Koch brothers and big utilities campaign to unplug solar power. The Koch brothers have a new ploy to protect the traditional energy business that helped make them the planet's 5th and 6th richest humans. They are funding a campaign to shackle solar energy consumers who have escaped the grip of big electric utilities. And I actually originally saw this story from the citizenscolumn.com where they titled it, Oklahoma will charge customers who install their own solar panels. Seriously, fuck the government. Yes, certainly. So how is this? This is... I just have to go on because this is how they've decided to describe this. Of all the pro-business, anti-government causes they have funded with their billions, this may be the most cynical and self-serving. On Sunday, a Los Angeles Times story by Evan Halper outlined the Koch's latest scheme. On Sunday, a Los Angeles Times story by Evan Halper outlined the Koch's latest scheme. Along with anti-tax crusader Grover Norquist, several major power companies, and a national association representing conservative state legislators, the brothers are aiming to kill preferences for the burgeoning solar power industry that have been put into law in dozens of states. Kansas, North Carolina, Arizona are their first targets, with more to come. They already have their first victory. On Monday, Oklahoma's Republican Governor Mary Fallin signed a bill passed by the GOP-controlled legislature that authorizes electric utilities to tack a surcharge on the bills of private citizens who have installed solar panels or wind turbines on their homes. That's right. Oklahomans who have spent money to generate their own clean and green power must now pay compensation to the power companies. Oh my gosh, that sounds so pro-business. We're going to take the government and we're going to point guns at people to take money from them to give to other... Are you insane? How is this pro-business, anti-government? They are turning to government to subvert the market, expressing a preference for solar energy. And it is going to feed the interests of the Koch brothers. No, the Koch brothers have perverted this concept. What's so crazy, I mean, it really, the phenomenon of the Koch brothers makes sense, all right? Two really rich dudes, tons of corporate interests, lots of, investments and so on and so forth. How did they get rich? American corporatism. Yeah, government makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. That's not a product of the free market, okay? So what do? So they subvert the free market in order to channel preferred treatment to them. And what's really fucking sick about the Koch brothers is that they used to be libertarians. And they, at least in name, I mean, they're linos, really, libertarians in name only. The ones that think they're gonna, they're gonna call themselves libertarians, when in reality, they're subverting the legitimate philosophical message of libertarianism, of the free market, of nonviolence, and turning it into this corporatism, which is anti-business but pro-government. This sounds a bit like government trampling on the independence of the citizenry. You'd think the Tea Party would be protesting and militia groups would be rioting with guns drawn, but since it is Republicans and big businesses doing the trampling, there is, as yet, no outcry from the libertarian crowd. Hello? We're right here, and we've been saying that government interference in the market is bad from the beginning. Oh no outcry from the libertarian crowd. So what is driving this crusade against clean energy? As Halper reports, quote, at the nub of the dispute are two policies found in dozens of states. One requires utilities to get a certain share of power from renewable sources. The other, known as net metering, guarantees homeowners or businesses with solar panels on their roofs the right to sell any excess electricity back into the power grid at attractive rates. These laws have helped the solar industry reach a tipping point where the business model is finally viable. In a world where too much CO2 from coal, gas, and oil is being pumped into the atmosphere, that seems like a good thing, but the Kochs and the utilities claim solar's success is a threat to the future of the power grid. If there are more and more households freeing themselves from total reliance on traditional power sources, there will be less money available to maintain the electricity delivery infrastructure. Now, this is where the libertarian message is so important to be applied consistently. because we have people that are deliberately misrepresenting what libertarianism is. And when you're the Koch brothers and you have all this money and you can tell people, hey, libertarianism is this, and they've never heard about it before, then that's the impression they're going to get. That's what they're going to think it is. When in reality, this is a subverted version of the message. This is a corporatist version. And this is what's so dangerous about allowing people to say, well, libertarianism is whatever I want. I mean, if libertarianism is believing in freedom, well, freedom is just a word. It's no. These words have meanings and specific definitions. And if libertarian means belief in freedom, then you have to understand what freedom is. And freedom is the right to exercise your property, of your body, of your self-ownership without the forceful interference with others. Government is fundamentally antithetical to freedom. It is a cancer on freedom, the natural state of liberty among human beings, respecting each other's rights as individuals. I am every time I hear something like this, well, you're going to get the outrage from the libertarian crowd, LA Times, if this is the kind of bullshit propaganda you're spewing. And you're mistaking someone looking for corporate favors from the government as pro-business and anti-government. Gee. And today is Thursday, April 24th, 2014. You're listening to the Adam vs. the Man podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're with us live at adamversustheman.com/live, we really appreciate it. And this weekend, I'm going to be in Oklahoma City for the Southland Liberty Fest. Please check out our Facebook page for details about that. Facebook.com/Adam versus the Man. Going to be hanging out with Tony Stiles, Kristen Megan, and a whole host of other amazing speakers. It's going to be a blast. Oklahoma City this Saturday, April 26th. Please check it out. And for those of you who are supporting the show, we now are taking recurring investments, donations at adamversustheman.com/invest. Please check it out. You can go by PayPal or by credit card there. Or, of course, we take Bitcoin and Litecoin, and more than happy to support the burgeoning cryptocurrency. Is it a market? No. It's so much more than that, isn't it? It's not just a market. It is the revolution in digital currency that we are experiencing right now that is going to pull the rug out from underneath governments around the world that are dependent on a fiat currency racket. That is, that they can just print or borrow money out of thin air. Print money out of thin air or borrow it from other countries that are printing it out of thin air and ripping off their people in order to create the massive disparities in wealth that we see as a result of government policy. Let's see, if you want to be a sponsor of the show, let us know. Send us an email. Same place you always would, as always, adam@adamversustheman.com. From libertycrier.com, Texas robbery victim forced to kill his dog with his bare hands after cop shoots it for barking. And I hate to say I told you so, but when you call the violent gang of thugs and criminals in uniform known as police officers because you've been robbed, well, what the hell do you expect is going to happen? A Texas man said this week that he was forced to kill his dog with his bare hands after an officer who he called to investigate a burglary shot the animal because it was barking. Earlier this week, Cole Middleton explained on Facebook that he had contacted the Rains County Sheriff's Department about a robbery last Friday. Middleton admitted that his 3-year-old dog, Candy, was probably barking when the deputy Jared Dooley arrived, but he insisted that the animal had never bitten anyone. "I shot your dog. Sorry," Middleton recalled Dooley saying. Middleton said Candy had been shot behind the ear, but she was not dead. Now, this is... I don't mean to make light of this tragedy, because this is really, really disgusting. I present this to you as a way to learn a lesson, as a teachable moment, and I hope that America, people all over the world, start to understand who the police are. And this is so important in the age of the internet, when we realize that as victims of police brutality like this, that we are not alone, because so many people have experienced this. It seems today like everybody knows someone or has experienced themselves some incredible pain or suffering or loss at the hands of the police. And this is just one of those cases where you go, oh, holy crap. But now, in the age of the internet, so many people are able to share these stories and get them out. Whereas before, police were able to get away with this brutality and bury it. And, you as an individual citizen had no way of getting it out, no recourse, at least in the sphere of public opinion. But the lesson here is, if you are being robbed, like if you are being assaulted, if someone is committing a crime against you, the last person you should call to help you out is a criminal. And let's get this straight. Every single cop in America is some kind of criminal, if only for their complicity in the death cult of the American government and the police state today. Think about it. We know every single day, in every single department in America, abuses like this happen. The only good cops are the ones that get fired for trying to hold their fellow officers accountable. If you are a good cop in America, you are not a cop for much longer, because in order to stay a cop in America, you have to be a bad cop to protect the assholes like this, who will do something as sick and deranged as Officer Jared Dooley did. Excuse me. This is from Middleton. I begged him to shoot her again, since my weapons were stolen, and he refused. I then had to do the otherwise unthinkable and take my poor baby's life with my own hands while praying for this to be over with. Welcome to the police state, America. By the way, you want to end the police state right now? You ready? Really simple solution. We can do this today. If everybody in America got on board and realized the power that we have to, and I'm not talking about overthrowing government, which would be nice. I'm talking about simply putting police officers back in their place and restoring some justice and order to society. It's really simple. I mean, why do you think police get away with this? Society respects them, worships them, adores them, bows down. Oh, they risk their lives. No. Being a police officer is not even in the top 10 most dangerous professions in America. Very, very few officers die in the line of duty. You know why? Because of immunity from the government. That's right. Oh, all they have to do is say, I felt threatened, so I had to shoot somebody. And they get away with it. The reason they get away with all of this is because society supports them. And I don't mean because they steal from us through taxes that go to pay politicians that keep this horrific, destructive system entrenched. I mean because we as individuals keep kissing their asses. So here's the solution, America. Really simple. If you have a dangerous, violent thug or someone who is complicit in the police state in your life, stop fucking them. Yeah. Stop letting them be a part of your life. Disassociate yourself. Are you married to one? Are you dating one? If you get hit on by a cop, tell them to go fuck themselves instead of trying to fuck you. Because that's what they're doing to this country. That's what they're doing to any semblance of justice we've ever had. And stories like this come here every single day. And you know what? I can't even keep up with them. I can't even cover this. And you know what? Society supports cops in America, around the world, because we know these violent thugs, they're not strangers, they're your neighbors, they're your friends, they're your family members. And you support that simply by condoning it and allowing them to have a normal relationship with you. Well, then they go out and put on that badge and that uniform and put a gun on their hip and they go and fuck with everybody else. It means you're complicit if you support a cop in your life. I got one more here. I got to cover this one too. From McFlugel.com, would you have shot this man? Here's a hypothetical exercise for you. You don't live in the best of neighborhoods. You're sitting in your home one night and you hear gunshots in your neighborhood. You grab your handgun and go outside to see if you can figure out what's happening. After a minute or two, you see a man in a hoodie with his hands in his pockets. You call out to him that you're a concerned citizen and want to know if he knows anything about the gunshots that just went off. Instead of stopping and answering your question, he jumps into his car. Since he parked his car in the direction you're coming from, he passes by you as he speeds away. In response, you fire your gun into his car, hitting him in his head, neck, and leg. Was it reasonable for you to shoot the man? Were you justified? You later find out that the man you shot was a pizza delivery man making a delivery. He didn't stop when you called because he knew he was in a sketchy area where robberies of pizza delivery men are common. Would you still be comfortable with your decision to shoot? You know where this is going, right? This is exactly what happened last night to Philippe Holland of Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. No, he didn't shoot an innocent pizza delivery man. He was the innocent pizza delivery man who was shot. Plainclothes police officers approached Holland after hearing gunshots in the West Philly neighborhood. They identified themselves as police officers and ordered him to stop and show his hands. He didn't because, according to the article, violent crimes against pizza delivery men are not uncommon. He justifiably felt that he was in danger, so he tried to get away, and so they shot him. Holland is currently in critical condition. He was unarmed, has no criminal record, was trying to earn a living, and by no fault of his own is in a hospital in very bad shape. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey said, quote, "Streets where there are too many guns and too much crime helped set up this tragedy." Talk about blaming the victim. Yeah. There are too many guns and too much crime on the streets in Philadelphia in the hands of police officers who use them to commit crimes against citizens every fucking day. Yeah, that did set up this tragedy. How callous. I'm not accusing Ramsey of sending his men out to shoot innocent people, but what set this up is a mentality where the police are given special privilege to shoot people without the same accountability expected of anyone else. They said that they're investigating it. Okay, so what happens if they determine that the officers acted wrongly? Will they go to prison? Will they personally pay restitution to the victim or his family? Philippe Holland will spend the night fighting for his life. How many police officers out there will fall asleep tonight thinking they were doing their job? I would have done the same thing, because these are the police officers that are conditioned by the legal system that has them doing their bidding for politicians to think that they can get away with whatever they want. That they are the glorious representatives of the people with a badge and a gun on the street, and if they are threatened, they are absolutely justified in using this kind of absurd, deadly force, regardless of whether it's actually justified, and they go and hurt people. They kill people. If this man had died and wasn't there to tell his story, what do you think the cop, like, let's say the guy died. I mean, he was shot in the head and neck and leg. I mean, it's probably millimeters away from death with these gunshots. What would have happened if he had died? The police would have said, "Oh, he was brandishing a gun. He was acting in a threatening manner before he drove away, and well, we had to shoot him in the interest of public safety." And they would totally get away with it because we have allowed the system to become that fucked up in this country. It gets better. Yeah, it gets better. It was a fun day going through the news this morning. From Newport Richey, Florida, WFLA, Newport Richey soldier says squatters won't leave his home. Now I'm going to cut ahead to the end here. Sharky, the soldier in question, says, "They are criminals. I am serving my country, and they have more rights to my home than I do." We'll come back to that. When Soldier Michael Sharkey was deployed to Afghanistan 2 years ago, he asked a friend to watch over his Newport Richey house. Sharkey and his wife are now living in Hawaii, where he is currently stationed. They plan to move back into their home someday, but right now they are fighting to get it back. They say strangers broke in, changed the locks, moved in, and they refuse to leave. As he said, quote, "I want the people out. They're criminals living in my house." But he was shocked to find out that the Pasco County Sheriff's Office says it can't do anything about the squatters. Oh, really? Here's where it gets complicated. Now, so these squatters have made up a story because when he was deployed, he left his friend in charge of his home, and he asked these people, his friend asked the people that are squatting there now to do some repairs. The people doing the repairs are claiming that they were allowed to stay in the house as part of an agreement for, a verbal agreement with a friend of the soldier to fix up the home. Now, this is a guy his name is on the lease. He's the homeowner. And he is saying the people squatting in my home are criminals and they have come into my home against my will. So you would think if you had an agency that is there to protect you or protect your property, and it's a government agency, that they would have some interest in actually defending your property and wouldn't take the excuse of, oh, we had a verbal agreement. Yeah, sorry, no. Can you imagine this? If someone broke into your home and kicked you out and the cops came to get your house back and the people squatting in your home said, the homeowner? Yeah, he gave us a verbal agreement that said we could live here. And the cops say, oh, okay, well, I guess we can't do anything about this now because that's a civil matter. That's what happened to Mr. Sharkey. And it just so happens, by the way, that these people in the house are criminals with real criminal record aside from this. But as Sharkey said, I don't think I should have to pay hundreds of dollars and go through that aggravation. I work hard, long hours, and these people never had permission to live in my home. They should be thrown out. Yeah, this is your property, absolutely. The guy in the home spent a combined 12 years in prison in New Jersey for, now, if it was drugs, I'd say he's a non-criminal. He's a victim of the system. No, for robbery, carjacking, and selling drugs on school property, which again, he was released in 2011. The woman that's staying with him spent more than 2 years on drug charges and was released in 2006. So these are not exactly victims of the system. But Sharky here is. Now, Sharky, you said you're serving your country. Well, I got news for you, brother. Nowhere fucking close to that. Are you serving your country? Not at all. You are serving politicians. You are serving the special interests. You are serving those who are fucking over this country in order to make themselves richer and screw everybody else, making the poor poor. You really think that these are people that care about your property rights? And what's worse is that you are a part of this system now. You are one of the trigger pullers for government. That's right. At least, I don't know what you do for the army, but you're part of this system supporting the trigger pullers. What do you think the U.S. Army does? You think it defends America? Hell no. It makes us less safe by making enemies faster than we can kill them. I can tell you that from personal experience in Fallujah. Come on, dude. Are you really so ignorant as a soldier that you don't know better? Now, I mean, I can respect a soldier who says, well, no, I mean, it was this or living on the streets, and I took this, and I do my best to not contribute to the system, but I know I'm accepting stolen funds in order to pay my salary. Come on, you don't believe this idea that taxation is voluntary, right? That the American people are just voluntarily making themselves poor in order to support Barack Obama's policies. No, you don't really. Did you buy that? Well, maybe you did. It kind of sounds like it. If you think you're serving your country and they have more rights in your home than you do, I'm sorry. But you should not be surprised to find out that the criminal enterprise called government you are a part of doesn't give a shit about you or your property rights. Why do you think there's so many veterans committing suicide? Why do you think there's a huge backlog of claims at the VA? Because you've been used like a fucking tampon, and eventually, when you have outlived your usefulness to the United States Army, you will be discarded like the piece of trash that they see you as. And if you don't get over that delusion soon, you're going to see a lot more people suffering in circumstances like this because the police state, on behalf of government, that violates your property rights really cannot be expected to protect you. Oh man, it gets better. From the LA Times, ex-deputies charged in planted guns case. And when you hear stories like this in the mainstream media, they kind of present them as this is just a one-off thing. Oh, these guys got caught doing some bad shit. And the system is working. See, that's the underlying narrative of this story. It wasn't that the headline is that they're charged. And it's true that that's really the news here, because that's the surprise. Oh, deputies went and just committed horrendous crimes in uniform. And this time, not only did they get caught, they're actually getting charged. Isn't that, so we might have a modicum, a tiny, tiny bit of accountability here. But no, this is not, the real story here is that this is the exception to the rule. And the story itself has that. Let me explain. 2 former LA County Sheriff's deputies have been charged with planting guns at a medical marijuana dispensary to arrest 2 men, one of whom prosecutors said was sentenced to a year in jail before the bad evidence was discovered. Julio Cesar Martinez, 39, and Anthony Manuel Paez, 32, face 2 felony counts of conspiracy to obstruct justice and altering evidence. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced Wednesday Martinez was charged with 2 additional felony counts of perjury and 1 count of filing a false report. If convicted of the charges, the former deputies face more than 7 years in prison. In court documents filed last week, prosecutors said that on August 24, 2011, the pair shut off electricity in a video surveillance system inside the dispensary, then planted the weapons. Martinez and Paez were patrolling West 87th Place that day when Martinez said he saw a man with a gun in his shorts pocket taking part in a drug deal. Martinez said he followed the man to the dispensary and watched him discard the gun near a trash can. The deputies said they found a second gun sitting on a desk near some ecstasy pills. So people engaging in commerce, freely exchanging goods for money, are being harassed by the police. I mean, that's the legitimate story that they try to put forward here that would have completely absolved them, of course, of any criminal responsibility. But prosecutors said that Martinez had kicked a wall outlet to shut off the electricity and that Paez then opened a drawer, pulled out a gun, and put it on a chair. Prosecutor said Paez planted another gun on top of the desk, which he had crawled under to disable the security system. The deputies then arrested two men, one on suspicion of having an unregistered firearm, another for possessing ecstasy in possession of a firearm. Both non-crimes. And this is the real problem with non-crimes being made illegal by the government. When government criminalizes non-criminal behavior, it means that a police officer can harass someone when they're not doing anything wrong. It means that the government can go after them for a non-crime. I mean, and all of this is a predictable consequence of, you could say, the American people turning to government for this, but really the government convincing people, the sponsors of government and politicians convincing people that it's okay to use violence against peaceful people. It wasn't until the next year that the Sheriff's International Criminal Investigation Bureau began investigating the incident. The district's attorney's office said, during that inquiry, officials discovered a video recording from inside the dispensary that they say was inconsistent with the deputies' reports. Now, don't you love how it's like the benefit of the doubt always given to officers? Oh, they don't lie. Police officers never lie. Oh no, sometimes they're mistaken. Sometimes they mistakenly just see that someone has a gun when they don't at all. Sometimes they imagine that someone has drugs in their pocket when they just put them there themselves. I mean, don't you hate it when police make silly little mistakes like that? Or when they shoot innocent people for no good reason? Shucks. Charges filed against one of the men falsely arrested were dropped, said Jane Robinson, a spokeswoman for the district attorney's office. But the second man had already pleaded no contest to the drug charge before investigators determined the evidence was planted. How many people do you think are in jail for bullshit like this? Well, when you find out that one gets discovered, and we have in this story here a way to estimate this. That man was sentenced to a year in jail as a result, but it was unclear how much time he served. Prosecutors were in the process of contacting his attorney on Wednesday. Martinez and Paez were arrested Friday. Each was released later that day after posting $50,000 bail. Yeah, so the guys that they fuck with go to jail, they get released on bail. And I mean, I can tell you how this works because I've been arrested and denied bail before and ended up doing 4 months in jail because I was denied bail. In a brief statement, sheriff's officials said Martinez and Paez separated from the department on February 27, 2013. Oh, they weren't fired, but you know what usually happens in these circumstances is they get paid leave while their crimes are under investigation, which is government code for while we come up with an excuse for their behavior. So, here we go. You ready for this? This is the big clue. Martinez had been with the department for 15 years. Paez for 7. You think this was an isolated incident? You think, oh, these guys, he's been on the force for 15 years, and then out of the blue, just one day, he's a good cop. He's only arresting real criminals by government's definition. You know, he's dotting his I's and crossing his T's, and he's helping old ladies across the street, and then out of the blue, just decides to set up a couple guys at a marijuana dispensary and totally fuck up their lives. No, just another typical night for these two douchebag officers. Criminals with badges and guns. And the statement said, this is the important part too, about how does the department deal with such criminals in its ranks? There was an administrative investigation where the appropriate administrative action was taken. The appropriate administrative action here would have been to take these two officers out back and have them shot, probably about 10 years ago. Okay, 7 years ago for the deputy that was only on for that long. Excuse my math. Sheriff spokeswoman Nicole Nishida declined to elaborate further, but said the investigation mentioned was separate from the marijuana dispensary inquiry. And if only we knew just how inconsistent all of their behavior was with any principles of justice, these officers would have been out of a job a long time ago. But will we see justice? Will we see for their victims any kind of reparation or compensation for their claims? And if we do, who's going to pay for it? You think it's going to be these officers? Hell no. It's going to be the fine taxpayers of Los Angeles. And they just get doubly screwed because of the way this system is set up, because we have turned to the protection racket of government for protection. Do you think the people who these guys have set up in the last 7 and 15 years on the force will have their cases reviewed? We can hope, but it's a small measure towards justice when overthrowing this entire system would get us a lot closer than simply begging in individual cases. All right. Holy crap, that was an intense 30-minute start to the show. But we have G. Edward Griffin standing by. Let's get him on the line here, joining us by Skype. And we're gonna radically shift gears for just a minute and go to talk about monetary policy for a little bit. Mr. Griffin, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Can you turn your video camera on, please?
Well, so it's off. How did that happen?
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, G. Edward Griffin is an American film producer, author, political lecturer, perhaps best known as the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, a critique of much modern economic theory and practice, especially, obviously, the Federal Reserve System. It's been my pleasure to hang out with him on Jekyll Island and actually get to see where the creature was born. But really, it is, none of that describes the significance of his contribution to the world's understanding of the Federal Reserve System. No one other than Ron Paul has done more to raise awareness about this issue than him with this book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which I highly recommend, and for all that he has done in the years since releasing it in order to promote this message and stay active and keep raising awareness. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Adam. It's a pleasure.
Well, what year was The Creature from Jekyll Island released?
I think that's 1994, I think.
1994. Wow. Yeah. So we're on the 20th anniversary.
Right.
Well, let me ask, we've covered these topics before, and I think most of our audience is aware that the Federal Reserve is a racket, that it's creating money out of thin air, that it's devaluing the currency, and it's ripping everybody off. But let's talk a little bit about what's changed in the last 20 years. What impact do you think this has had, or what change is coming as a result of this raised awareness?
Well, two good questions. I think the change is obvious, and that is that the public is now even aware that there is such a thing as a Federal Reserve. I think prior to 1994, and actually prior to 2004, really, the phrase Federal Reserve was something like a mystery code, People didn't know anything about it, didn't care to know anything about it, and what they thought they knew about it was that it must be a government agency of some kind, part of the alphabet soup, and who cares?
Excuse me, sir. I have to interrupt for just a second. As awesome as your beard is, I believe it is speaking into your microphone more than you are at the moment.
You mean it's scratching, making a sound?
There you go. Excellent. All right, please continue.
We'll de-awesome it then. So anyway, I think the change is that people are aware now that there even is such a thing as a Federal Reserve, and not only that, they're kind of mad at it. They're not sure exactly how it's working, but I think, as you pointed out quite correctly, that the general public knows that they're getting ripped off somehow by the banks, and they know that the Federal Reserve somehow is involved with the banks. So that's not really a deep understanding, but at least it's halfway there, and prior to that time, people were giving it no concern at all, no thought at all. So I think we made great progress, because I think one of the objectives of the Fed from the very beginning is to hide behind this mask of appearing to be just another government agency, which of course it is not. It's a cartel. We can talk about that perhaps later. But so that's the first thing. But your next question is perhaps more interesting, which is where is it going? Mm-hmm. What do we expect to happen with this trend? Well, it can go one of two directions. And the one is a good direction, and the other is not so good. Of course, they usually have that kind of a choice. The good correction, of course, is that people will continue to explore and learn and find out that the Fed is not a government agency, that it's a banking cartel, and that it's been given through legislation called the Federal Reserve Act. This cartel has been given a monopoly over the nation's money, if you can imagine that. Here's a private consortium of private companies, banks, who have been given the power of government to create money for the nation. And that's really what they pulled off. And they created out of nothing. There are no requirements or limitations except those which it sets itself.
Well, hold on. May I just interrupt to clarify, if I may, that there is you say that they are creating money for the nation. It's more that they are having the money that they have created forced on the nation by government, correct?
Well, that's part of it. They create the nation's money. And then the government says, okay, everybody, pretend that this money that the banks created is government money. Just pretend like it. And we're going to require by law that you use it. So, yeah, those are the two aspects. Now, if they just created money out of nothing, as they used to do pretty much with something called banknotes, well, then it would still be pretty bad, but at least people could escape. They could say, well, we don't want those banknotes. They're just backed by the reputation of the bank. And we know for sure, we know the bankers, and they're not very reputable, so we're not going to use the money. But when it appears to be the nation's money, when it says United States of America across the top of it, and when it's actually printed by the Treasury, and all of that, people think it's government money, and there are laws on the books requiring us to use it. We have to use it, or we go to prison. So it's sort of it's one of the reasons people think that the Federal Reserve is a government agency is because there are laws in place to require us to use their money, and so it appears that it's government money.
Now hold on.
Of course, the law behind it.
I want to ask you to clarify that as well, because a lot of people don't understand what that means, and most Americans never bother to ask even, where does money come from? So what do you say to someone who says, well, that's not true. Don't we have the choice? Couldn't we use whatever we wanted?
Well, it's partially true. You can use barter, of course. You can use anything you wish for barter. You can even use gold coins and silver coins in exchange for goods and services. And you could say, well, that's as good as money. But when it comes to the legal definition of money, meaning that it's the nation's money, it's the American currency, and there's a law forcing you to accept it, then that's a whole different animal. So the people, yes, they're free to some extent to use other things as a medium of exchange, but they must accept American Federal Reserve notes. They must accept that. Nobody can decline to accept that in the payment of debt, public or private.
And you could make the case that maybe as an individual working off the grid, if you're self-employed, you can kind of escape that. But obviously, with all the major corporations so tied to government and corporatism, you know that all of those resources are stuck into the dollar system, and there's no way that the economy as a whole can divorce itself from that situation.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult. Of course, that's the goal, the magic, the bullet. There, all these alternative currencies that are springing up. They're all hoping to find a way that they can somehow break through that barrier and have these alternative currencies be used in common commercial exchange. But as long as all of the money has to go through the banking system, of course, they're kind of sitting on that, and it makes it almost impossible to do. So how are you going to pay your utility bill? You know, if the utility companies don't accept anything except Federal Reserve notes or checks written against Federal Reserve notes, well, then you have to use them to pay your gas bill and your light bill. And grocery stores and so forth, they all require us to use currency, official currency. So that's the big problem. As the alternative currencies are trying to get restaurants to use it and gas stations to use it, they make a little bit of headway, but it's still 99% of the road has to be traveled yet.
So where are we going with this?
Where are we going with it? Well, as I said, there are two ways, two directions that we can go. If the people continue to learn as to what the true nature of the system is, they're going to demand a change. They're going to demand a return to honest banking. They're going to demand the elimination of the Federal Reserve. Get rid of that cartel. I mean, it's no different than a banana cartel or a sugar cartel or an oil cartel. I mean, what sense would it make to give, grocery stores a cartel, a monopoly over all food so there be no competition and so forth? So the people would demand getting rid of the Federal Reserve.
I want to explore this. That's a really exciting way of looking at this because I've never considered it. But you're right. Okay, so we kind of take it for granted because it's been in place our whole lives. This is the money system. This is just, we don't know where money comes from. This is just the way it is. And yet you can just draw this parallel really quick. Like, well, what if the government said only Safeway can, it will issue official government food, and that's the only food anybody in this country is allowed to eat has to be this kind of food. And you know that there would be ridiculous, disastrous consequences from that. That like choice is removed, corruption is rampant. The kind of GMOs and processed foods will become even more dominant in our food supply, and you won't have the choice to opt out. But what we don't realize is that having a monopoly on the money is probably more destructive than having a government monopoly on food.
That's right, because the money invades all the other areas of commerce. They all depend on money as the medium of exchange. So it's really whoever has a monopoly over the money has a pretty good stranglehold over everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
You know, including politics, by the way, because politics is run with money. And if you're the kingfish and you're the guy that can create the money and make it available and restrict it to some groups, you are eventually in a position to be able to buy up governments. You can buy it up one politician after another. And finally, you own the government. So you wind up with the situation we have now where people are saying, well, why doesn't the government control the banks? What they don't realize is that long ago, the banks took control of the government. And you see, that's why it doesn't work. So where are we going with this? Back to that. People have to recognize this reality and demand real change. That means we got to get rid of all of these political hacks that are in Washington now that are beholden to the present system. They all have to go because they're already proven their unworthiness. We need to get people into office who have no axe to grind, that want to return to free banking, honest banking. Banking needs to be there, of course. Banking can and should perform a very vital service, but they shouldn't be given special privileges. They shouldn't be given monopoly privileges. They shouldn't be bailed out when they fail. You know, what other company can say, well, you know, we lost our shirt last year, but we're so important that now we got to go to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers had better give us some money so we can do it again. You know, so we have to stop bailing out the crooked banks and the fraudulent banks. Return to sound money, and everything would be fine. It wouldn't be easy. It would be a lot of rough road ahead, but we could return to a very prosperous economy again. And that's one way to go. I'm hoping that's what will happen. The other way is that people will continue to mumble and grumble and say, yeah, those bankers are no darn good. What we need is more government regulation so that we can force them to be good, not realizing that the government and the banks are basically in the same bed anyway. You can argue as to who's got the right side and who's got the left side of the bed, but they're both in bed. So as long as people keep turning to government and more regulations and rules to correct the problem, they're just going to get more and more of the problem, which means that the system will collapse. I mean, I hate to say it, but you asked me, and my opinion is that there's no way that this can continue. It gets worse and worse and worse. The economy is being plundered. The American people are being plundered, legally plundered by this system. There's only one place for that to end, and that's in total collapse. So that's the other place we can go. And I'm afraid right now we're still going down that path rather than to the Enlightenment path. But we're doing our best to change that. And I know you are too, Adam.
Oh, I appreciate that. And now, in the past, you've advocated for a government-issued metals-backed currency. This sounds like, are you moving away from that position?
No, I'm not at all. I think that all currencies, the best currencies, should be backed by precious metals. But there are alternatives, and I think people should be free.
Well, I want to then hone in on this. But you're saying that the government should still be issuing the currency, but in a fair way.
Well, okay, that's a deeper question than it may sound, because personally, I would rather see currency issued not by the government. I think governments are the least trustworthy bodies to issue currency or anything for that matter. The only thing governments are good for are fighting wars, really, and protecting, supposedly protecting their people. But I recognize that most people think that governments should have that sovereign right to issue their own money. And I think, okay, that's fine, as long as it's real money and it's backed by something of tangible value, and that people don't get ripped off by this Ponzi scheme of, creating fiat money that's backed by nothing except debt.
Well, if it's so you're saying it wouldn't be forced on anyone in that scenario, which I think we agree on, right? That's really important. You wouldn't have the government forcing the currency on anyone. But if a government was issuing a metals-backed currency, how would that even survive with free market competition? I mean, have you ever had a free market and then had government doing something that was able to surpass it without somehow forcibly stifling the free market?
Well, there have been, believe it or not, brief periods of history where there was honest banking and government money was literally backed by bullion. Great Britain, in its most prosperous, powerful era, had exactly that kind of a system. The United States was almost on that basis for a period of about 60 or 80 years. When I say almost, because the money was not backed 100% by gold or silver, but it was pretty high, probably in the range of 80% for a long, long period of time. And during those brief periods of history where government money was restricted to being backed by something of value like that, the economy's prospered, and it's probably the biggest lesson to be learned if you can study those periods of history and see that these are the greatest periods of economic advance. But your question about freedom to choose is the critical thing.
Yes.
If the government issues money and people are free to use it or not to use it as they wish, what will happen is that, these legal tender laws are what require you to use their money. If legal tender laws were stricken from the books and people were free to use government money or not to use it, or to use somebody else's money, they could use Disneyland books if they wish to, in exchange, if they wanted to. Give them freedom to choose. What would happen is that if the government money was good money and backed by gold or silver, everybody would choose to use it. But if the government money was monopoly money, funny money like they have now, and there was an alternative to choose, even if it was issued by the guy next door, if he printed gold coins in his basement, and everybody knew that those gold coins really were 99.99% gold, everybody would use his money instead, you see. So the freedom to choose, Ron Paul calls it freedom in currency, alternative currencies. If people could choose whatever currency they want, if they want to use yens or Deutschmarks or dollars, whatever, then the free market would step in, and the benefits, the profits, the success would go to those that provided the greatest service.
Now, there's a distinct advantage that fiat currency has, aside from being forced on people, which is a nice advantage when your business is backed by the full guns and power of the United States federal government. But it does have one kind of core economic advantage over a commodity-backed currency, in the sense that a commodity-backed currency costs money, or gold rather, being taken out of the circulation in the economy. If gold is being used for money, it can't be used for industrial purposes or for jewelry or for so on. And it takes that value, in a sense, out of immediate usage in the economy, whereas a currency that's backed by nothing, as we know, it's a debt-based system in the United States. When the government, it makes the way that debt is paid back to the Federal Reserve is by taxing the American people. But now we have the emerging cryptocurrencies, which seem to have the advantage of both, in the sense that they're not backed by a commodity. They're simply a universal IOU system, or global accounting ledger that's not backed by anything, but has value in its nature as a ledger, and it is completely voluntary. Do you think that Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies have the potential to even outcompete what you would term as honest metals-backed currencies?
Well, it remains to be seen, doesn't it? I like these cyber currencies or cryptocurrencies a lot because, on the surface at least, they appear to be limited. That's part of their mystique, is that everyone agrees at the beginning that there only be so many, and then that's it. So after that number is reached, then it'll be playing the same game as you brought up regarding gold. Then you can't expand the money supply anymore. Right. It's limited, just like it would be limited to gold. But the trouble with that is, there's several things I think wrong with it. One is that it makes me nervous when this medium of exchange really is nothing but vaporware. It doesn't really exist except in digits in a computer. And one of the historically proven advantages of good money is the fact that it has value, intrinsic value, they sometimes call it, for something else. So that even if you can't use it for money, you can use it for something else.
Right.
And so these don't have that.
Well, hold on a second.
If something would happen to the internet, let's say we have a solar flare that takes out all the satellites and all the power generators, and we don't have internet for 10 years or something like that. what happens to all this money? Well, it's gone. That's all.
Well, hold on. Realistically, if 10 years in the future people were demanding a gold-backed currency, it would be largely represented digitally in bank ledgers and in bank accounts and things like that. People would we're not proposing, as people who are fans of this being a possibility, that everybody's going to, carry around a little pouch of gold coins. I mean, that's silly. And a lot of people misunderstand that. But no, a gold-backed currency is something that we could manage digitally and would have all those same problems. But I'd like to just dispute one point in that you said it has no value whatsoever. And here's where, we have to recognize the legitimate value of the US dollar, right? It has value as an accounting system. You can count in it. It is a unit. It is a piece of paper with a number on it. And it's important to note that that's all it is. But all of the value in cryptocurrency comes from its inherent security in its encryption and its value and function then as a ledger.
Well, yeah, that's why I said when I used the word value, I added the word intrinsic value, which means that it has a use, it has a value for something other than money.
Okay. Well, because all right,
yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and that's the distinction, and it's a good thing you brought that up. And also, I noticed that there was an article I read recently by one of the advocates. I don't know that he was a founder, but one of the advocates of the Bitcoin concept. And he said, well, once we reach the point where we can't make any more, we'll just start another Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow, there go right. All of a sudden, I saw how this limitation of the numbers available are going to probably be circumvented. If people want more of it, they'll just start another one. And then we'll have 2, and then we'll have 4, and then 8, and so forth.
Well, already we have hundreds, actually.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point is that I'm all for anything like Bitcoin that takes the power away from governments to enforce whatever decrees they decide are politically advantageous to the politicians,
right?
Especially in money. So anything that does that, I'm all for it. But I do just think that we ought to be cautious about the fact that these currencies do not have intrinsic value.
Right, and that certainly is something that needs to be taken into account when choosing a currency. But it's just so exciting that already we have this power with the internet to choose to stop using the government money, and that is such an incredible opportunity that people have now to at least get out of the dollar system, even with all of the weaknesses and potential pitfalls for cryptocurrencies. It sounds a lot better than holding a dollar that is constantly losing value in order to pay off government sponsors. And
well, you bet. Yeah. And that's why, of course, we just know that governments around the world are not going to let these cryptocurrencies go unnoticed. They're already maneuvering now to figure out ways. Excuse my phone ringing there, but anyway, they're maneuvering now to figure out ways to close down the access of these currencies to the internet, make them illegal, to charge people with crimes of money laundering and all that sort of thing.
Right.
And this is what governments always do.
Right, trying to crack down on any competition or anybody that threatens their racket. And I think the most important thing to say, we might differ a little bit in our predictions, but as people who believe in the free market, we understand that the most important thing we can say about the future is that we don't know, because we don't presume to have the wisdom of millions of people exercising their preferences in every single decision. But we can inspire people in the present by raising this awareness to want to make those decisions more conscientiously and to stop feeding into the government by using the dollar or, opting out of it as much as possible. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well said. Thank you, Adam. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, we go now to Skype. If anybody is, let's see who's on the top of the stack. L Bionic would like to add us as a contact. Our friend from Texas, Danny Martinez. What time is Eastern do you start? Well, we're live now. Let's see if we can get Mr. Martinez on the show. And 12 Pacific, that's 3 p.m. Eastern. See if Danny Martinez is available. And if not, we will see about our next guest, Gigi Bowman. I'll bet Gigi Bowman is already standing by. Let's see. Nope. No, Mr. Martinez. If you want to get on the stack when we get off with Gigi Bowman, we will be going back to Skype. All you got to do is send me a chat. There are directions on the page at adamversustheman.com/live. And if you want to get on top of the stack, it's a stack war. You got to just chat me. You don't need to be added as a contact in order to chat me. And if whoever's on top will be the one we go to next. So send me a message. Skype Adam Kokesh. We go now to Gigi Bowman. And I know she's going to be standing by. We have, actually, Gigi Bowman is a long-time hardcore activist who, all right, we got her on the line here. Ladies and gentlemen, Gigi Bowman is currently a candidate for New York State Senate. GigiBowmanForSenate.com. Also check out LibertyCandidates.com and the SaveLongIslandForum.com website. She is going to be at Liberty Fest, New York City on May 3rd. If you want to get tickets to that, LFNYC.com. Gigi, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hello, my buddy Adam. How are you?
Excellent. And I'm recognizing the room that you're in, your home office there in Long Island, where we have had
that's right.
amazing events in the past, and I'm so grateful for all of your activism. But tell us about your run for New York State Senate and why this is, which for someone as wise and intelligent as you, doing something so silly and reckless, what opportunity do you see in running for the state Senate in New York?
All right, let's get this straight. I was never going to run for office. That was the last thing I intended to do. And in my state, which is New York, we had something called the SAFE Act, which is an infringement on our Second Amendment, and it was pushed through in the middle of the night by our governor and master Andrew Cuomo. And it was pushed through. Nobody read the bill. Nobody had time to read the bill. And as I watched this voting take place on C-SPAN, my blood started to boil. You know, I have that Italian blood. It started boiling and over, and I just got so angry because they were doing this because of Sandy. Oh, I'm sorry. They were doing this because of Sandy Hook. And I just say goodbye to my mail, just so everybody knows. And they talked about how the guns were the reason for the shooting at Sandy Hook, and that's why they needed to push this through in the middle of the night. So I watched, and only one senator, actually it was an assemblyman, his name was Blankenbush. He got up and he said, you know, I've heard that a lot of these school shootings were done by people on medication, on SSRI medication. And nobody seems to be talking about that. And there were crickets. Nobody said anything. It was just really quiet. He sat down, and that was the last that was mentioned. And that is why my blood started boiling, because I know that 100% of the school shootings in this country have been done by people on medication, whether it be people who had PTSD, kids on medication, you know, because they were said they were told they were depressed. There's all kinds of reasons that kids are on medication these days, but it just seems that every one of these school shootings, we find out that's the reason. And I really resented the fact that this was the reason they pushed this infringement on our Second Amendment through and blamed it on guns, blamed it on the fact that if we don't, you know, stop people from having guns, we're going to have more and more of this. It was just fear-mongering. And at that moment, I just said, you know what, I got to do something about this. And running the organization, Liberty Candidates, over the years, I've tried to stress to people that we need to run for local office, run for local government. You know, a lot of people like to step up and start running for Congress right away or Senate right away. But that's not the way to go. We're not going to get anything done if you never ran for office before and you're never going to get elected. Start locally. So I'm running for New York State Senate because I really believe that we need to get activists in office, not to make more laws, but to repeal these ridiculous laws like the SAFE Act, to make sure that I never, ever say yes to any new laws that they, you know, I look every day and there's new bills that are totally ridiculous with redundant laws. And I just want to be the voice in my state that says, no, we're not doing this. We're going to repeal laws. We're not going to make new ones. We don't need any more regulations. We don't need any more laws. We don't need any, I think right now our newest law in New York is that kids can't smoke unless they're 21. Look, I don't really advocate smoking. I think it's horrible. I smoked for 30 years. It took me quitting that was the hardest thing I ever did. But
Yeah, I
if
can
you
relate.
can if you can go to war and kill someone, you could certainly, deserve to have a cigarette and a beer if that's your choice. And
You mean
there's no
children have rights
choices,
too? Children have rights to go to the other side of the planet and kill people? That's nice.
Exactly.
Well, no,
And, it just pisses me off.
Wait,
so you know how I am.
Are you telling me that SAFE doesn't stand for Second Amendment is for everyone? Oh no, that's a different SAFE. Okay,
No.
but now
No.
I want
The
to.
unsafe act.
Now-
The unsafe act. That's what we call it.
As libertarians, we have a really bad habit of asking why, and when you ask government, you never get good answers. So I want to ask you about this experience that you point out, where you had a legislator in the New York State House saying, "What about pharmaceuticals?" And you said there were crickets. Why does that happen?
Because Big Pharma owns all of them, because they're the biggest lobbyists in the country and give their money to people to get into office, and then they owe favors. Big Pharma owns our media. They have a say in everything that's put out on the news. I honestly believe that they are one of the biggest problems we have in this country. Corporatism. They own everything. So they're afraid to speak out. You never hear any legislators speaking out against Big Pharma. If you do, you could probably be sure that person won't be in office very long. And, it's a sad state of affairs, but this is what we got going here. Corporatism is our monster in this country.
Now, I know you've shared this story before, and I really don't want to put you on the spot because I know it's a terrible personal one, but I think you understand the value in sharing your daughter's story in order to wake people up and to make them aware of this. And as much as it would be great to have people like you in the New York State House, as long as people keep consuming SSRIs and other dangerous, psychoactive pharmaceuticals, this is going to keep. This will continue to be a problem. And I understand that that the value of education at the individual level is far more important than the political reality. So if you would please, why is it that from your experience and from your daughter's story that what you do now and why you're so passionate about the issue of the pharmaceuticals influence on society, or pharmaceutical industry's influence on government and society as a whole?
Well, I really don't mind talking about it. Actually, the reason I'm running is so that I can talk about it, and hopefully if I can save one other mother or father from going through the same thing, then it is worth it. Okay. So my daughter at the age of 15 was prescribed SSRI medication. Being a mother of 3 beautiful daughters and 2 stepdaughters, I know that being a teenager is not an easy thing. Being a parent of a teen is not easy. I personally think that it's like a disease that kids go through, once they hit puberty, and, until they're in their 20s, you want to hope that they make it out alive and that they don't get hurt. And it's a hard thing. And we know, because we've been there. Okay. So, kids experience things, they experiment with things. So my daughter was 15 years old, absolutely beautiful, smart. She had a boyfriend that was beautiful and smart and loved her, and she had a great job as a 15-year-old working in the coolest clothing store. There was no reason for what happened to her to happen. She was prescribed SSRI medication, Zoloft, and within 9 months of taking it, she committed suicide. And you have to consider the fact that it didn't take long before I started paying attention at that point to what was going on. And one of the prescription that she was on was never even, I don't know, I'm losing the words right now. It was never approved for children under 24 years of age. I can't stress that enough. At the time, it was 2003. They didn't even have that black box where the black box literature where they had to explain, all the side effects. None of that was in there yet. So it was a pretty, um, not new. I'm not gonna say it was a new drug. I'm not even sure when it came out, but it wasn't at the point in time when enough kids had killed themselves that they, decided to really look at it again and maybe put some, things on the box that would prevent people from taking this. The side effects like you see on commercials, it's ridiculous how long they are and how much they grow. As a matter of fact, my daughter at the time, she complained because she was getting sleepy from the drug, and we went back to the psychiatrist, and he said, "No, that's impossible. You cannot be getting sleepy. It doesn't do that." And then it wasn't more than a week later we saw on the commercial that had been added to the new side effects. So yes, everything you see in those side effects really happens, and that's why you have a list 3 miles long every time you listen to the commercials on TV. Anyway, she kills herself, and I do blame the pharmaceutical industry, and I'll tell you why. I learned in 2012 that one of the companies, GlaxoSmithKline, they were sued in England because in this country we can't sue pharmaceutical companies. Another wonderful, corporatist regulation.
Right.
We cannot sue our pharmaceutical industry. Anyway, they were sued in England, and they had to admit guilt. They were sued $3 billion. They lost, and they admitted that they were pushing these pharmaceutical medications on their doctors to push on patients for perks like Hawaiian vacations and concert tickets. So when I saw that just solidified all of it, that this is all such a bullshit, that these doctors, they just push these drugs. I mean, they didn't even check my daughter or talk to her. They just looked at her wrist every time she went there to see if she tried to kill herself and said, okay, here's more drugs. I watched them do this. Not 10 minutes in the office, just, all right, you seem to be okay, here's more drugs. She was in there because she, at the age of 15, tried to kill herself before she was given this medication by taking diet pills. And she was cutting, which was a big thing in 2003. The movie 13 was out. Kids were doing it everywhere. So if I had known then what I know now, I probably would have taken her to a nutritionist. I probably would have looked at what was going on and what she was eating, what was affecting her. And I would not have taken her to a psychiatrist or a doctor.
Well, I want to hone in on this because this is what's really helpful for people that are in this situation today, either as individuals deciding for their own treatment or especially as parents for their children. Why did you choose to take her to a psychiatrist at that point?
Actually, I didn't. She was, unfortunately, people intervened, and she was taken to a hospital because I had been at work, and I came home, and someone else's mother said, "Oh, she tried to kill herself with diet pills." You know what? I did the same crap when I was 15 years old too. And being a mother, you just want to do what's right for your child. So I called a doctor. They told me to bring her into the hospital that's local, and they put her in. I didn't know what to do. If I could do things differently, I would.
Of course,
totally.
And I know that's the worst kind of self-torture is to go back.
It was like a momentary thing. I just made a flash decision, and I really wish I knew more, which is why I want to talk about this stuff to other people.
And what's really remarkable about this story, and because I know you personally, I can say this, is your own psychological resiliency and the fact that you have come so far in being able to talk about this, because a lot of parents who understand that they have a reason to be ashamed. And I don't mean to say that in a judgmental way, but people will feel that way about themselves in your situation. I know you've gone through a lot of that, and you've come out of this on the other side. And it is because of your powerful self-examination of your experience that you're able to share this in such a powerful way that most people are simply too afraid to. It's too painful, and they haven't had the courage to really face up to this and come to the place of acceptance where you are and channel all of those powerful emotions to something far more productive. But why did you think it was the right thing to do?
Because as parents, you just think that doctors are there just because they care. I mean, I was mistaken back then. That's, part of being the sheeple. You trust your government, you trust your doctors. You think that everybody is there for the right reasons. And I learned quickly, because right after that, I started looking on the internet at other parents who had lost their children and what they went through. And I fell into a rabbit hole of an amazing place where I found out that 10,000 children had killed themselves because of this medication. And that was in 2003. Actually, a lawyer called me to ask me if I wanted to sue. And I'm not big on suing. It's my own personal thing. To me, I felt like it was just the wrong thing to do. But he told me a lot of information, and he told me that back then that every single mass murder in the country had been done by someone on medication, except for 9/11. That's what he said on the phone. So right after that, I really started, researching myself and finding out that there were things that I wish I would have known. I mean, you can't take back time, but like I said, if I can help anybody else, and what I've done in the last couple of years is I put my daughter's picture up, and she's a beautiful, gorgeous 15-year-old. First of all, nobody thought she was 15. She was very mature for her age. She was gorgeous. She was, just a special kid, always smiling, just a big, beautiful smile. The fact that she died because she was depressed is kind of shocking, because she didn't even have a chance to grow up yet. But what I found out through my research and listening to other doctors who are holistic doctors, it might have been actually fluoride that caused my daughter to be depressed. And that's like a whole other issue. But when she came home from the hospital as a baby, the day she was born, my doctors on Long Island told us to put fluoride in their formula, because I didn't breastfeed. I used formula, and I would put two cc's of fluoride in her formula every single day, and it never occurred to me that this was affecting her, because what can I tell you? I'm embarrassed to say that I was asleep at the wheel. Okay, I thought that fluoride was the thing that we used because it made our kids' teeth stronger. It made our teeth stronger. Anyway, to make a long story short, she cried for the first year and never stopped crying, and I couldn't understand what was wrong with her. And I kept changing her formula and trying to find out, what was causing this. I had another child. She never cried. Anyway, it never occurred to me that it was fluoride. I found out in 2012 as well that one of the side effects of fluoride is depression, and that it possibly can hurt and be a physical pain. Now, she never was off of fluoride her whole life, because she went from these drops in her formula to chewable tablets, to brushing her teeth, to getting braces and having fluoride washes all the time. If I had known then, I would have taken her to a nutritionist. Maybe we could have taken her off of fluoride, see if this affected how she felt, mentally. We had no depression in the family that we knew of. Nobody had ever, been diagnosed as being depressed. So, I didn't think of it as being a gene that was passed down. I didn't really even believe she was depressed, but, this could have been the factor. And I honestly believe it was, because we found out, I think most of us know now that fluoride is a poison. And why was I putting poison into my baby's formula? I mean, please, if somebody tells you to put fluoride in your baby's formula, don't do it. And if somebody tells you to give your kids fluoride drops, don't do it. There's other things you can do. Okay, go buy some coconut oil.
Well, I mean, I don't even know, where to go with this. It's such an intense story, and I've heard you tell it, a couple of years ago. I think I first heard you tell the story a few years ago when you were still somewhat unsettled about it, and it's great to see that you've come to a point now where you're much more comfortable discussing this and really making it clear what the lessons are here. But I'd like to ask you then to maybe just if you could step back to the bigger picture, and would you make the case that being a statist is hazardous to your health?
Yeah, I mean, if being a statist means trusting the people who are ruling us, yeah, I don't trust anybody anymore. I try to take matters into my own hands. No matter what issue it is. Right now, for instance, I run an organization, Save Long Island, and what we try to do is awaken people to different issues. And every one of these issues is really connected. And the connection between all of them is that our government is bad. We have not only is the government bad, but we've got corporations who are basically running our government now. And it's all about control, and they don't care about us. They do not care. A lot of people will call me a status because I'm running for office, but I'm not running for office because I want to control anybody. I want to get in there and open my mouth and tell people that they need to take control of their lives and stop putting their faith and trust in government and regulations. And I'm not an anarchist yet. I mean, I still believe right now that we need a little bit of, a little bit of government. I don't know how to explain that, but there's just certain things that we might need to have government for, whether it be just to.
You're too smart to finish that sentence.
It's hard. You're talking to a person who's not an anarchist, but heading there. I've been doing that for a couple of years. I see that there's a lot of bad out there, and there are some good people who are in our government. I really believe that there's some people who have run for office who are good people, like Justin Amash, like Thomas Massey, and we need people like that are gonna keep people in check and explain why they vote for things, and explain what a bill is for, and if something is for the people, or for the Constitution, that sticks to the Constitution. I know a lot of the anarchists out there don't even believe in the Constitution, so it's kind of hard. It's a slippery slope I walk with you, Adam. I understand the anarchists and why they totally don't believe in voting anymore, but I still believe that we have a vote and we have a say, and I just want to have a say in how our children are brought up into this world. I mean, right now we've got Common Core education. All right, I don't know if you know what that is right now, but
yes.
It's a huge issue. And it's corporations running our educational system. I'd like to get in there and dismantle the Department of Education. Why do we have it? We should have schools that are local, that are, at least state run, not federally run. So there's a lot we need to do. I don't think it's time yet to get rid of government completely, but I think that we need to get good people that are activists running for office, that get in there and start dismantling it. That's the only way to do it. Ignoring it's not going to make it go away. So,
well,
you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think if everybody ignored it and actually worked to eliminate it from our lives and not tolerate any form of violence or coercion, we could. But you're right that we're a ways off from achieving that understanding. And until then, we do have to deal with the monstrosity that's in front of us and do what we can to minimize the negative effects of its violence. And I think you're doing an incredible job of that with your activism and with your candidacy. And we could go on for another hour about the philosophical debate here. But I'm sure we'll have you back on in a few months and see where you've come in your thinking, and also get another check-in on your campaign and see how this story is getting around. And I just want to ask one more question though about your campaign, and somewhat being centered around this personal experience and your crusade against the pharmaceutical industry. How is it being received by voters?
Well, the people that live in my community that have to vote for me might not even know too much about who I am. So that's the hard part, is gathering together my friends in Liberty who do live close by and having them help me. It's definitely grassroots from the bottom up. And little things happen. You get an article here, you get, an interview here, and maybe people will finally start to realize who I am. It's not going to be easy. I'm also running as a libertarian, and the reason I'm doing that is because I am a libertarian. I could primary the guy that I'm running against, who's been there for 18 years, and I'm a registered Republican. He's a Republican. He voted for the SAFE Act. That's my problem with him. He's a Republican who voted for the SAFE Act. He doesn't even follow his own party's platform. So I have a big mouth, and hopefully people will hear it. I've got quite a few months now to express that, and I've got good friends who are going to help me too. I wrote a letter about my experience, everything I've said to you right now, and I'm putting it in doorways, and I have friends who are helping me do that. So, it's not easy running for office. It's not easy trying to break in there. You never know what will happen. So I got to give it a shot.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Gigi. I wish you the best of luck, and I really hope that everybody is as touched by your story as I've been. And I'm so glad that you're able to do what I mean. There are millions of Americans who have experienced some reduction in quality of life because they have fallen for the racket of the pharmaceutical industry and have not had your courage or ability to come out and tell the stories the way that you have and to put it to good use. So thank you and really best of luck. And I really can't express how much I admire your ability to have taken that experience and done something so now amazing and positive and powerful with it.
Thank you, Adam. And before I go, remember, I'm going to be at Liberty Fest on May 3rd. There's more tickets. It's filled with beautiful women. So if you want to hear some strong women speak out, go to lfnyc.com, and there's still tickets available.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Gigi Bowman, GGBowmanForSenate.com. All right, we'll go now to Skype, see who we've got queued up here. Let's see, we've got Will. Is this the Will we were trying to have on earlier? Okay, wow, we've got a really long... Oh, by the way, this is someone who chatted earlier and then just cut and pasted it and re-chatted it to get on top of the stack. That's great. Totally awesome, because I know they're online. At least they were when they did this. Hello, I wanted to reach out to you because I know you are a very influential person in the Liberty movement. I have a story that I feel as of you might be interested in and willing to help spread the word. The situation involves an Afghan war veteran with TBI and PTSD. His injuries have been ignored by the Army. Now they have arrested him and have held him for months in a military prison. The reason he has been held are directly related to his combat injuries, which the Army has failed to treat. They are pursuing a court-martial where they will try to strip him of all benefits and give him a dishonorable discharge. This is an extreme injustice. I strongly urge you to look at the page Free Cody Fretz for a more in-depth look at the situation. Cody Fretz is a patriot who fought valiantly for his country. Now they have turned their back on him. It's a sad story, and I hope you can draw attention to this injustice. William Hastings, Iraq War vet. Well, I will take a look at this story, and I definitely appreciate everybody who brings stuff like this to our attention. And looking up the page right now, it looks like we've got this on Facebook. So we'll definitely be looking into this. But I got to say that the kind of language that you're using here, Will, is feeding into the problem. It's incredibly disempowering to call someone who was part of the violent gang of thugs of government, and I was too. I'd like to think I'm better now. But, and I'm not trying to say this in a means of judging an individual. This is simply an observation of reality. What is the United States Army? What is the United States government? It's a protection racket. He was a trigger puller for politicians. And it should really be no surprise that he's getting used. And all right, Will would like to chat about this. All right, maybe, Will, we can get into the story and cover it, but we can get into the story and cover it, but... Will, can you turn off your stream, please? We can get into the story and cover it, but... All right, excellent. Will, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing to our attention the situation of this one veteran, Cody Fretz, and I definitely appreciate you bringing attention to this. But in the way that you're talking about this, do you realize that the language you're using is feeding into the problem?
Yeah, Adam, I understand exactly what you're saying. Like you, I feel like I'm kind of like you in a way because, I joined the Army out of high school and, a lot of these guys do, and we're all, gung-ho. We want to serve our country and we want to, kill bad guys and stuff. But, at some point, that gives us an opportunity to wake up as well, which I believe is, what happened to me and what has happened to Cody and, countless other soldiers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether it be, going to war, Afghanistan, Iraq, or, wherever it may be, we made that decision when we were ill-informed, young and impressionable. And now that, once we're getting home and, we're waking up, we're questioning these things, we're questioning the government. We know what we did over there. And we're not proud of it. And a lot of us aren't, to those who are, they may be still ill-informed. But to say that you go over there and do that and then, kind of come home and the government's like, hey, we appreciate you doing our dirty work. Now, get out of here. I don't really agree with that. I still think that for that service that you were providing that you thought was sincere in the beginning, and then you actually had to get there and do it in order to realize, that, it might not have been great or whatever. I think that you should still be able to come home and have your government at least afford, to give you the benefits that, they said they were going to give you.
I certainly agree that would be better than the alternative if the government is going to use people and discard them. But in a way, it's almost more appropriate, and I don't want to say that. Say this to sound callous, but there's a certain temptation to the idea. It would be really nice if Barack Obama tomorrow just announced that he was going to completely defund every Veterans Affairs hospital in America. Now, I don't mean to say that that's a good thing and that's not going to cause incredible human suffering, but it would make it clear what the government's agenda is, that it really doesn't care about you. The only reason the government spends money to take care of veterans is to convince young people to join and sign up in the first place. It is more propaganda for, and this is why that there's a backlog of claims that people don't really know about. I mean, it's been out there for a while, but it hasn't changed since the beginning of the global war on terror and since we started seeing thousands and thousands of veterans coming home needing disability compensation. Everything that they do it's propaganda in order to get more bodies into the machine, to convince more people to give up their liberty and to go kill innocent people on behalf of politicians. So if anything, I like sharing stories like this, not because it's an injustice at an individual level, because that's all well and good, and there are individuals that do deserve and need help, and that the community as a whole, that the country would like to help, because, hey, guess what? As a country, we screwed up. We elected the politicians. And yes, I know we're victims in this whole system, but as a country, we, if you supported the wars, if you believed in it, if you voted for a politician who voted for it, if you paid your taxes, you are culpable. You are part of that. You bear some responsibility. And I think stories like this do go a long ways to raising this kind of awareness. But the people we need to be reaching out to and telling these stories to is not, each other or government officials or even voters who are going to potentially change the system. It's the youth of America who are going and signing up today. And it's one of the most reassuring and gratifying things about what I do with Adam versus the Man to hear. We get emails, on a pretty regular basis from people in high school saying I was going to enlist, but you convinced me not to. And that's the real power of it. Take away that effect. So I hope that you see that. But Will, let me give you a second, if you would, please, by way of your 30-second military resume, introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah, my name's William Hastings. I joined the Army in 2008. I'm in the reserves, National Guard, and I've got about 4 or 5 months left, and then I'm done with that. But other than that, I'm a student out in Boulder, Colorado right now, and I'm studying political science. And that's where my path has taken me now. But like I was saying earlier, I think it probably took the deployment to Iraq for me to actually wake up. And I remember riding through convoys in Baghdad when I first found out about Ron Paul. And then that's kind of where I woke up, and I, understood that, this isn't really, what defense is. It's not supposed to be like this. So, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm the same way. If when you're talking about like First or Second Amendment rights, if you're going to violate those rights, I'd just rather them not be there altogether rather than violating them. And I feel the same way with the military benefits and everything.
Right, that it's pretend, it's a sham. The
Yeah, it's
idea
a sham.
of constitutional
I'd say you
rights.
just not sugarcoat it and just tell me how it is. Like, we're going to screw you and we're not going to sugarcoat it.
But if they did that, I mean, if we had an honest government that told us what they were really all about, it wouldn't last very long. The racket is based on this massive deceit. So tell us the story of Cody Fretz, if you would, please, and the lessons that you would like people who are considering joining the military to take from it.
Well, the brief story, I can't go into all the details because obviously it's an ongoing investigation. But like I said, Cody Fretz grew up small southern town in Virginia. He's, you talk to anybody, they'll tell you he's the best guy you've ever met, and so he joined the military, and he joined the Army, and he just so happened to land at one of the most troubled military bases that the Army has, which is in JBLM in I think it's Fort Lewis in Washington State, which is notorious for situations like this, whether it be soldier suicides or whether it be dishonorable discharges with no benefits, basically for no reason. And so he did his deployment in Afghanistan, and just like most young soldiers do, I believe he woke up to what was going on and understood, and then he came back, and obviously he was suffering from PTSD, and he got a traumatic brain injury. So I think that the PTSD is something that a lot of soldiers suffer with, and I think it's something that obviously isn't looked at very much by the military. My honest opinion, I just think that they'd rather all the veterans kill themselves so they didn't have to deal with the problem. But so he came.
Well, hold
back.
on. You don't have to think that. You can look at the reality, and it's a fair presumption that is the motive. And I remember hearing from Vietnam veterans complaining about the VA when I first got out of the military, saying the entire VA attitude is delay, deny, and wait for you to die.
I actually haven't heard that one, but that pretty much hits the nail on the head.
So what would you want? What if you had a younger brother or someone who's considering enlisting in the military right now? What would you tell them?
Well, I have two younger brothers, and I have friends. They come to me and they ask me. I say, if you're going to join the military, if you're going to do somebody else's bidding for them, I would say that one, do your homework, and two, if you do decide to join and you get in. I don't want to say accept the consequences because, like I said, I disagree. I do believe that once you come home and you've done someone else's bidding and they say they're going to do something for you, they should live up to their end of the bargain. But I mean, if do your homework on it, because you're going to end up like, just in the last 4 years, you've got over 30,000 soldiers with other than honorable discharges who are not afforded benefits that I believe that they've earned.
Well, do you think working for the government, if taxation is theft and your salary is stolen, do you think it's fundamentally moral?
I consider myself a libertarian, so obviously I don't agree with taxation. I do think it's theft, but
well, let me say then, with all due respect, sir, I think that was a very, very weak answer.
That's fine.
Because if someone came to me and said, I'm considering raping and murdering someone. What should I do? Is this a good idea? Would this be good for them or for me or for my life to go and rape and murder some people? I think that might be, I'm considering that as a career path because I'm going to rape them and murder them, and then I'm going to take their wallets, and I think I can make a pretty good living doing that. And if nobody ever catches me or understands what I'm doing, then, I might even be a respectable member of society. And if I give a little bit of that money to charity, perhaps, I might be as respected as a soldier, and I could be a champion in the community. I mean, what would you tell someone like that? Oh, you know what? Do your homework first. Make sure that you can get away with it. Make sure that society's going to respect you. Make sure that you're raping and murdering people that have enough money in their wallets that you can have a good quality of life and you can come out unmentally scathed from that experience. Hell no. You would tell them the absolute truth with no holds barred, with no lack of moral condemnation for the immoral thing that they are actually thinking of engaging in. And if it is immoral to put on a uniform,
that somewhere in America, there's still I think there's still some honor in serving your country, but somewhere along the line
Hold on a second. Let me address that. There is an honorable intent for someone, if they are so delusional and they are so ignorant. And I got to say, if this is the case, you got to be, borderline, if not completely if you're in this position, you are mentally handicapped by propaganda, by fluoride, by government education, whatever the case may be. But if you are looking at that and you think that what you are doing by joining the military is defending this country, if you think that you are making this country safer by serving in the U.S. military, if you have not done the basic research to understand the immorality of it, it is fundamentally irresponsible. Only for someone who is truly just an absolute psychological, mental, emotional cripple, only for them who join out of that honest intent to want to protect and serve, only for them can they say, I made a mistake. For everybody else, that is grossly irresponsible. And I can say that about myself because I had a good education. By most American standards, the common accepted standards, I was raised right, but I was not taught to distrust government, and I was not taught to even basically do my homework and understand what it meant to enlist in the United States military. And if someone was coming to me and saying, should I enlist, I would tell them in no uncertain terms that what they are doing is signing up to take stolen money for their salary, to be a trigger puller for a violent gang of thugs that is premised on violating people's rights, hurting people, ripping people off, and is going to use you like a tampon and throw you out without any regard except for propaganda purposes to sucker more people into being a part of this racket.
Yeah, well, I guess the only issue I have with that is if you think about all the people who have joined the military, and it took that for them to wake up, and it took that for them to come and listen to your radio show. I could tell you right now, if I didn't go to Iraq and I was just, guy who never went on deployment, I probably wouldn't know who Adam Kokesh was. So I feel like you got to give people an opportunity to wake up, and some people, when I was...
Hold on. It took me 10 years. And I stay humble about this process because it took me 10 years to really understand the philosophy, from identifying myself as a libertarian. And I appreciate what you are pointing out, that there is a silver lining to this. But would you tell me that we can still regard a rapist or a murderer who has gone to jail and then heard about me in jail and say, oh, well, maybe it was a good thing that they raped and murdered someone and went to jail so that they could find out about Adam versus the man? Absolutely not. You would step in and say, this is
context necessarily, but I mean, I know you and I won't agree on that, so that's fine. You
all right,
that's fine. But no, I think that we've gotten across what I wanted to get across, and I don't necessarily disagree with everything that you have said. I just disagree with the fact that I think that they should live up to their end of the bargain. If you're gonna sign up, they should live up to their end of the bargain.
I'm with you there.
They should just not sugarcoat it and say we're not going to give you anything. We're not going to give you shit.
Right. I don't know, and I'm with you there. And there are a lot of veterans suffering, and I've dealt with the consequences of my own service myself. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't use my benefits because I don't want to take the money from other people. Yeah. That's my choice. But I feel like you should have the choice to use the benefits if they are there to be provided. And at this point in time, they're there to be provided to an extent. So. Rather than just kicking you out on the street and saying good luck,
Right. Or worse.
Yeah. Or like they'd rather you do, just shoot yourself.
Right. So. No, and Will, I want to thank you for calling in, for sharing this. I would just hope that you understand then the power that you have as a combat vet, as someone who's deployed with the U.S. Army, who can influence the future of this country. And when you're talking to people in your family and in your community that are considering joining the military, that you provide them with the full value of the knowledge and wisdom that you have gained from your experience, and not hold back, because it is that kind of holding back. And I'm pretty confident saying that that's what you're doing. If you're saying just do your research, that
tell you what, if somebody would have came to me before I joined and told me about guys like Ron Paul and Milton Friedman, and even gentlemen like yourself, I definitely would have reconsidered. It's taken me down the path I've been down. I don't necessarily regret it, but like I said, if somebody had been there to tell me, instead of the recruiter.
Yep. Wait, you mean recruiters lie?
No, never. They never lie. Come on now.
All right.
I appreciate you talking to me, Adam. I really appreciate it. And, if you have any other questions for me, I'm definitely able to answer them.
No, thanks so much, Will. I really appreciate it. We're going to look into this Cody Frett story and see if we can cover this tomorrow and bring some attention to that case, because there are a lot of people suffering who were suckered by government into doing this, suckered into being a part of the violent gang. And while there is a lot of responsibility to go around, there are certainly those that deserve our sympathy and our support. Will, thanks so much for the call and for sharing your perspective. Really appreciate that. All right, we go to Pam Tingretti. She's one of Gigi's army. All right. Let's see if we can get Pam online. Didn't we try to get Pam yesterday? Or maybe she said she didn't want to come on. But she had a comment about this is our friend Pam from Long Island. Excellent. Yes. I didn't recognize the name when I saw it yesterday on Skype. Long Island. Excellent. Yes. Pam, if you would turn off your stream, please. Yesterday on Skype. Pam, if you would turn off your stream, please. Can you hear me?
Just 1 second. I'm gonna do it just. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Pam. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Yes, we were going out a couple of times. In fact, she just put an event to go and give out flyers. Go to house to house to house. And a few weeks ago we did it and had a pizza party after that. And I brought cookies. And we walking around most of the houses, it was during a time when it was kind of rainy. A lot of people weren't home. But I did meet some people. And to answer a question that you had before about the response, I can tell you it was kind of mixed. Her area, and we were pretty close to where her house is, so I could call them neighbors, is a mixed bag. You have a lot of progressive type people who look progressive but were pretty open-minded. I had one gentleman I handed a flyer to, and he was reading it as I was talking to him, and he was absolutely fascinated. He thought this was absolutely wonderful, what she was standing for. And looking at him, he looked like a college professor, which I immediately think of being leftist.
Uh-huh.
Well.
So what's the negative response then? If it's been mixed, what negative response have you gotten?
Actually, the only negative responses is, another flyer.
Oh, okay.
No, the fluoridated guys.
Yeah, right. So it's not an objection to material; it's an objection to paying attention and thinking about the world around them.
Exactly. In fact, in my history, I used to be an EMT, and an EMT is one of those people who have enough information medically to be dangerous. And one thing that I know about fluoride, it is a neurotoxin. And I've had fights with my dentist for years.
Well, why do you keep going back then?
Huh?
Why do you keep going back then?
Oh, he knows better now.
Oh, so you've educated him.
Oh, well, that and another thing, my mother had, she was one of those little old ladies, God rest her soul, who had a problem with osteoporosis. They put her on Fosamax.
Mm-hmm.
And Fosamax, unfortunately, did not warn people at first that there was a problem if you have dental work done. And she had dental work done, and this caused a bacteria to grow in the bone of the jaw, and she suffered what was
Ooh.
literally called by dental specialists as jaw death.
Oh.
Okay, and it's not just Fosamax. All of those osteoporosis medications will do the same thing. So it was one of those things where you learn about medications, unfortunately, by experience. And just like Gigi, we also there was some kind of class action suit against Fosamax, and we didn't go through with it either. We should have. We really should have, because it was rough. Because that bacteria was always there. Eventually, my mother died of septicemia,
Which is toxicity from bacterial infection, right?
exactly. And septicemia means it's in the bloodstream then.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, it seems like everybody's got one now.
Oh,
Everybody,
sure.
if not themselves, they know someone who has been hurt by the big pharma racket.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I mean, the medical profession really, they are very, what's the word I want to talk about narcissists. Okay, I got another story for you. This is a good one, because I think you'd appreciate it because you know me. My mother also, she lived, a very outdoorsy type of life as a young person. And even older, she had wound up at a small house by the water. And she developed skin cancer. Now, there was a bit of skin cancer on her back. Of course, she can't see it. She thinks it's something wrong with the bra strap. And I remember looking at it and saying, "Ma, this does not look good. You're going to have it checked." And she was one of those types that said, "Nah, don't, it's nothing. It's nothing." So the next time she went to the doctor, and the dermatologist she went to, which is part of like the hip center, if you know anything about hip, or it used to be
No.
hip. I don't think there's any hip anymore, but it was an HMO.
Okay.
It was where all the doctors are in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes to the dermatologist. The dermatologist says it's nothing. So I keep looking at it, and for a long time I didn't get to look at it. And then one time she just said, "Oh, this is getting worse. I can't even wear a bra." And I took a look and I went, "Ma, you have to go to the doctor again. It's got eyes." And it was ulcerating, but it did. It was two ulcers on it, and it looked like eyes.
Oh, man.
So we went to the dermatologist. It was a different dermatologist, and he looked at it and he went, and I just went nuts. And I just said, "Listen, this is my mother, and everybody feels about their mother." And I just said, "I don't, this other guy should have his license taken away from." I was livid. And he says, "Well, I can't do anything about it. You have to go to a plastic surgeon." Now, surgeons, what a special bit of, egotists they are. And I went to, and had my armor on. So I took my mother to this plastic surgeon. Poor guy. It was more of, I looked at him and he could tell that I was, "Prove to me you're good enough to work on my mother." and he was a very, very nice guy. He figured, he was going to be able to excise the whole thing. It was just basal, thank God. And he was able to, but he told me afterwards, he says, "Mrs. Tangretti, I have never been so intimidated in my life."
Oh, man. Well, I just have to, if I may jump in here, there's this is a consequence of government driving up the cost of medical education and limiting competition. And so this is why surgeons are able to have that kind of ego. If they make it very, very, very hard for someone to become a surgeon, as opposed to what the market demands for the actual needs that we have from surgeons for providing legitimate medical services, they're going to be able to, massively drive up costs. And then the few guys that are able to make it through and women are going to have that ego, and they're going to have that power over you, and they're going to be able to charge exorbitant amounts for their services.
Mm-hmm. And I have wound up having an attitude when I go to the doctor where it's more of, I hired you. You are my hireling. You do it the way I want it.
Yeah.
And it's the way I've dealt with my internist. I mean, I have issues, but I say what I'm going to take and what I'm not.
Yeah, it's funny.
And
People spend more time haggling with mechanics than with doctors, and it's really kind of sad.
Well, I'm a doctor haggler. I can't.
I mean, if we want a real functional market, we have to assert our rights as consumers, and yet we're sort of frightened out of doing that when it comes to medical care. And I'm glad that you shared. That's a good lesson. But if you could tell me just briefly, how do you convince a dentist who is an establishment-approved fluoride feeder to get off the to educate himself about fluoride?
Well, you come right out and you don't, bandy about. You just say, hey, listen, I have just so many brain cells at my age. I'm 61 years old. A neurotoxin is not what I want on top of it. I use Tom's toothpaste because it has no fluoride in it. And I don't want, Well,
hold on. About Tom's, you have to pick the one that they have fluoride free, and they have fluoridated toothpaste.
Yes, they do have fluoride, but they also have non-fluoridated ones, and you can get the non-fluoridated ones at least in some of the pharmacies that are around me.
Mm-hmm.
And pharmacies. Oh, that's another one. I had another straight out of pharmacy school. I swear, the older one does not bother me. But I went to get a prescription, and it's a nice old prescription, They haven't changed it, and it works. And she says, oh, you're supposed to have this on top of that. And I looked at her, and I said, oh, child. Don't start. You're a cute little thing, and I don't want to destroy you right now.
Oh, Pam, I think the most valuable part of this call is how much you have made me look forward to getting old and being able to play that card. Oh my gosh, do you know how much? I mean, really, you can get away with so much. And 61, you're still pretty young, but if you can play that card over someone who's like fresh out of school with the arrogance of the best propaganda that money can force into their brains, being able to play that card, it's got to be really fun.
It is. It's wonderful. But the thing is, it doesn't work unless you go natural. You must keep the gray hairs or the white hairs.
Well, it makes me just want to put on a wig and dress up like Jackass. and I mean, just like there's so much you could have. Obviously, I'm like referencing the guy who's the expert at having fun, pretending to be an old man. But you could do so much more with that.
Oh, sure. And if you look at my profile picture, of course you can. The profile, not on this one, but on Skype, but on Facebook, I put one of me like 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was redheaded. Now that should have been a warning.
All right.
But now with the gray hair, now I'm undercover.
We should have seen you coming. Pam, thanks so much for the call. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Good night, sweetie.
Hope to see you next time we're in Long Island. All right. We got two more queued up here. Let's see. Dave is on top. Also, thanks for the awesome show. I sent you some Bitcoin as a means of saying thanks to you and the crew over there for making it happen. Here's the transaction ID. My condolences to everyone who's suffered at the hands of these dumbass quacks masquerading as doctors. Yeah, very much appreciated. Ashley, our favorite caller, writes in, here's a question, not calling in for young libertarians who are ANCAP in nature but have yet to put it into practice in their lives. I move out. How can they get the courage to do so? Okay, so if you're a young libertarian and you've started to figure this out and you go, well, gee, how do I live up to these values? And I think what you're getting at here is that they're in putting it into practice in your own lives. And you said moving out, like being a libertarian doesn't necessarily mean you have to move out and be on your own. I don't think that's really it. But the courage to put these things into practice in your own life, I think I'll give you the answer because it's really simple. I mean, what is it that frightens you into not doing this? It's a kind of emotional servitude, and we talk about this a lot on the show. And I think it's one of the things that makes the perspective that we bring unique is examining emotional slavery, emotional servitude, and the way that we are cowered into submission by our parents and our friends and our families and the community as a whole, not speaking out, not rocking the boat. And when we have the conversation so manipulated and controlled by the authorities, well, we're given an impression that everybody around us wants us to similarly bow down to authority, that's the status quo, that's what's going to make us part of the in crowd. And that's not the case. And this is what's so amazing about the internet, just destroying that stranglehold on the conversation that they have had for so many years now. So we're able to look around and say, hey, do you really buy that crap? No, I'm with you. I want to be free. I'll imagine that. I want to think for myself. I want to assert my rights. And yet we are still bullied into submission and into making our decisions based on the judgments of others. And it is really about embracing psychological freedom, emotional freedom, the power to choose your own mental state at any time, knowing that you can choose to be happy, that you have that power with every breath you draw. And yet it's much more complicated than that in real life, because we have been raised in this environment where bullying and fear-mongering determines our behavior. It's almost like we're in this sense, we're just like a pack of dogs where the alpha, nips at people by the neck, and it's a matter of who's the biggest and strongest is in charge. And in today's world, it's kind of like who can manipulate the conversation the most, who can emotionally bully people into subservience. And when you ask, how can someone have the courage to live more libertarian and apply these principles to their lives, there's really a very simple answer. Because what we do is we have respect for our fellow human beings inherently, but we are not always very good at separating out what they do that is righteous from what they do that is unrighteous or criminal or just bad behavior in general, like emotionally manipulating someone or using a kind of violent, aggressive communication or judgmental communication even. So the answer is to have more respect for yourself and your own judgment, for your own will and your desires, and accept yourself for who you are as a free, beautiful, independent human being who has things that they want to do with their life and ways they want to live. And if you want to be happy and you want to be free, then choose that and embrace it and disregard all of those in your life that would judge you or try to emotionally bully you into submission or into groupthink or into just going along as another pack animal in the herd, because human beings were not meant to live that way. So it's really just simple enough as saying all you have to do is respect yourself and your own will and not be bullied emotionally by others. Only your judgment and your decision-making in your own head can decide what is right and best for you. And if you stay true to that, that's the most libertarian thing you can do. Happiness causes freedom, not the other way around. You can't chase freedom down and beat it over the head with a club and drag it home to your cave to enjoy it forever and ever. No, it's a choice that you make right now out of respect for yourself and your own divine individual will. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Adam vs. the Man podcast. Hopefully I will see you day after tomorrow. That's right, Saturday in Oklahoma City. If you want to sponsor the show, if you want to donate to support the show, adamversustheman.com/invest. If you want to become an actual sponsor or get involved as a volunteer in any other way, please send us an email, adam@adamversustheman.com. How many statists does it take to screw in a light bulb? I'm sorry, but that's classified. Cool, huh?